Falling short. Issues of Uncle J. Hey Paul, how you doing this morning? I greeted as the tall, Caucasian, and slightly heavy-set teenager entered my office to take his medication. During this time of my life, I was managing a residential unit for 16 to 18-year-olds about to leave care. I'm not doing well, answered Paul. What's the matter? My girlfriend broke up with me again. Again? She always breaks up with me and then begs me to get back together about a week later. Sounds kind of rough. It is. Is that why you haven't gone to college throughout this week? Yeah, I was too depressed to face all that. Can I ask you something? What? Do you think your girlfriend is right for you? Nah, but no one else will have me. That is not true. Yes it is. Look at me. First of all, you have a lot of things going for you. And second of all, you are way too young to be restricting yourself like that. At this stage, your number one priority should be building yourself up and not revolving your world around any girl. I need her though, said Paul, then taking his medication and walking out of the room. Episode 11, Mental Health. Genuinely nice. To a stranger they will greet, like that person genuinely exists. King, beggar, or criminal. To show respect, they can't resist. To make a positive difference, these people will try more than thrice. Why? Because these people give from the heart and are genuinely nice. In my very early years, I was somewhat happy and content, despite being subject to a lot of neglect and abuse by my mother. The pastoral care and support derived from my school environment helped protect my mental health. During this period, I was content with my own company, and my creative side was given room to grow through epic sagas I would create with my toys under my bed, stories I would write in class, and puppet shows I would create with my hands. Having said that, during this period I remember having a feeling of being left out appear and grow within me, a feeling that was derived by observing other parents cherish their children, in a way my mother didn't cherish me. In fact, my mother treated me more like a nuisance that got in her way of winning the heart of my stepfather. But my happy-go-lucky disposition still grew, and kind of rose above how my mother relentlessly failed me. It was when I moved in with the Finneys that my mental health really began to take a beating. I was constantly being abused physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for no real rhyme or reason. Not only was I constantly subject to pain, but I was robbed of my peace. As being a second-class citizen, I was open season to everyone, including help, teachers, and strangers. A lot of the time, I was beaten for not being good enough without proper support or information on how to improve, be it with behavior, academics, or anything else. I remember at around 8 years old finding the roll-on deodorant on a dressing table and trying to figure out what it was. As a result, Bolaji, with Kemi and Rotimi as his audience, spent the whole afternoon beating me up because I touched it. After he was finally done, I still didn't know what I had done or what the roll-on deodorant was for. I also remember struggling in school. In the context, I was a C-grade student instead of an A-grade student like my cousins. And instead of my uncle giving me support to do better, like I wanted, needed, and even requested for, he would simply write me off as not being good enough. And that was the constant message relayed to me directly or indirectly. You're not good enough, and you will never be good enough. And unlike in England, the Nigerian schools I attended didn't provide a pastoral and supportive environment to counteract my abuse. Instead, they provided a harsh environment that added more fuel to the machine, which went on a rampage on every aspect of my being. The experience created a lot of sadness within me, which evolved into loneliness and depression, which led to a complete breakdown at the age of 15, which confused and amused my entire year group. Simply put, 9 years of intense neglect and abuse became too much, to the point it was overwhelming, and it didn't seem like it was going to stop. I remember my mother would derive pleasure from making me miserable, to the point she would brag about how she mistreated me to her friends. Weirdly enough, till this day my mother would never acknowledge the fact that she mistreated and generally failed me as I grew up. And people like Rotimi would get angry if I talked about the abuse I suffered, like I don't have permission to do so. After my breakdown at 15, I moved back to England, which in my mind at the time would set everything right again. This was because of the experience of my first few years there. But nowhere on this planet is truly paradise, and a source of protection is different from a source of cure. I once heard a saying that states a man should never return to a river of the past because both the man and the river would have experienced change. I left England a happy-go-lucky 7-year-old and returned a hurt 15-year-old that was damaged and still under attack by people who were meant to love and protect him. On top of that, my head of year was a psychopath, which is not an exaggeration, and I had to fit in as a teenage boy, fresh from the shores of West Africa. I remember in the first year of my sixth form, I had a part-time job at Tesco's, and for 2 weeks straight, after work, I would casually walk to a nearby abandoned high-rise block and get to its top to stand on the edge for at least a half an hour, where I would try and muster up the courage to jump off so my life would end. But like with all my previous suicide attempts, I couldn't go through with it because of the fear of pain. Thank God I didn't have access to a gun, because I always imagined a bullet to the brain being quick and painless. It's funny, because when I gave up, I thought to myself, since I didn't want my life, I will give it to others, which ironically injected the desire to help people. The problem, however, fell on the fact that I was too ignorant and wounded to do so effectively, which led me to being either mocked, rejected, or taken advantage of, even though I had some success. The fact that I was good at pretending to be happy and together didn't help. Now that I think about it, my university days was just a 3-year meltdown, sandwiched in complete despair. I guess that's why, for the year that followed, I binged on food, alcohol, and weed. My abuse also left me with some kind of variation of PTSD, which flared up randomly when I was being yelled at, mistreated, or ganged up on. I used an extrovert-like personality as a mask because I was ashamed of being depressed and feeling worthless. I was full of a lot of anger, unforgiveness, and hatred, which affected my ability to have and maintain relationships in general, as I would often separate or isolate myself from people in an effort to cope. Like with all people, it got to the point I had to choose either to let my pain fuel a one-way ticket to the dark side, or to let God heal and use my pain to become wiser, thus giving birth to wisdom, free from bitterness, coldness, hardness, and any kind of hatred. My anime life, episode 11. The mental destruction that Jay and others that got as far as he did went through while training as Serpent Dove assassins meant they were wiped clean of all their humanity. Only a remnant, who were like Jay, held on to the fading memory of the love given to them by their nanny. Overall, most, if not all, of them had only the makings of a stone-cold killer within them. A killer able to take out any person in multiple ways, in any circumstance imaginable, without fearing death. However, being an assassin wasn't just about killing. It also included infiltration, beyond just physically breaking in unnoticed, or with brute force. This meant part of the training was about learning how to be charming, charismatic, or just come across as harmless. This meant part of their daily routine involved observing a person for a minimum of 8 hours. Every day it was a different person. This type of training included watching over all kinds of people like the rich, the poor, the middle class, the working class, prostitutes, men of faith, children, the elderly, the young, couples, single people, criminals, you name it. It was like they were being bred to be psychopaths. Then they were given tasks to earn the trust of strangers randomly, picked by their handlers. "Hi, I was wondering if you could help me with something," asked a 14-year-old Jay, politely, as he approached a young woman wearing a summer dress carrying 2 bags of groceries. "Okay," responded the woman, taken by surprise. "I wanted to get a gift for my sister, who's about your age, but I'm not sure what to get her," explained Jay sincerely. "What is she into?" "I know this sounds terrible, but I don't really pay attention to her. Getting her a gift is more to make my mom happy." "I understand. I have a younger brother too." "Let me help you with that," said Jay, taking the woman's groceries. "Thank you." "My name is Sam, by the way," said Jay. "I'm Lucy. Nice to meet you, Sam," responded the woman as they both started to walk together. "So what do you think? Should I get her flowers, teddy bear, or perfume maybe?" "I guess any of those could work, but if you really want to impress your mom, your gift needs to make her cry." "Is that even possible?" "Sure." "What would your brother get you that would bring you to tears?" "Something that was real but sweet." "How about a poem that was cheeky but loving?" "That could work." "I'm pretty good with my hands, so I could carve it out." "That sounds perfect. Anyway, this is me, said Lucy, stopping in front of her home. Thank you, Lucy. I knew talking to you would be a good idea. Jay had completed his mission for the day, which was to get the woman's name and address without giving up his identity. Falling Short's complete series can be found on JOMAJ Studios' YouTube channel. Falling Short is also available in paperback book format or on Kindle. To get your copy, email jomajstudios@gmail.com. That's jomajstudios@gmail.com.